The mother of the alleged father went on camera and did something you almost never see in real time. She looked at a newborn, 8 pounds, 20 inches, head full of hair, and she measured him. Not with love first. With a tape measure. Arms too short. Wingspan not monster enough. Ears not Spock enough. Ducts under the eyes. She couldn't confirm because somebody, somewhere, is angling the phone away from a nose. And in the middle of that measurement, Karlissa said the sentence that is now doing laps across every timeline. My spirit did not jump. 6 words. No filing. No lab result. No stamped envelope. Just a grandmother on a live stream telling the internet her body knew something before the science did. That's the receipt we're pulling apart tonight, because a spirit is not a document, but the way she described that spirit, that was a document. She read it out loud. She just didn't put a case number on it. If you're new here, this is the room where nothing leaves without a paper trail. Hit subscribe, turn the bell on, and stay through the 4th pass. That's where the framing war lives, and that's the part nobody else is going to walk you through slow. Here is what we actually know, stripped of the noise. Neveah Akira gave birth. Baby boy, reported as superior, son of Neveah Akira. 8 pounds, 20 inches long, healthy hair, breathing here. Congratulations belong in the room first, because a woman finished a pregnancy under conditions most people would not survive with their nervous system intact. Second, WAC 100 has said, on record, that Neveah signed off on all DNA checks. No stalling, no lawyering, no long delay window. Third, Karlissa, Blueface's mother, went on camera and delivered what can only be described as a public pre-verdict. She did not say the baby isn't her grandson. She said her spirit did not jump. She then walked through, feature by feature, every reason her spirit stayed still. The nose she saw on a sonogram she was not supposed to see. The arm length, the wingspan, the skin tone under the cuticle, the ear cartilage, the ducts under the eye, the weight-to-height ratio, and she framed the whole audit with a line about 3 men in 2 months and a tattoo on a door that is the shape of the case. Now, let's open the folder. Add one more layer to the brief before we crack it, because there are figures orbiting this room the headline versions leave out. WAC 100, Cash Jones on paper, per the all hip-hop archives dating back to his death row adjacent management years, sits in this file as the negotiator, the swap scheduler, and the one voice speaking calm while the household speaks loud. Blueface himself, still legally Jonathan Michael Porter per the LA County Superior Court docket in the assault matter documented by the Los Angeles Times, is out of custody on a supervised runway that makes any public paternity theater a live risk to his release conditions. Neveah's team, per a Complex attributed statement carried by Complex, has kept the address of the hospital sealed and the postpartum window closed to visitors outside the immediate approved list. And the archived comment thread on Karlissa's own IG Live announcement page, captured on way back the same afternoon it aired, still lists the segment length at 41 minutes and 12 seconds per the Wayback Machine. That's the room we're in now. Start with what was actually said, in order because the sequence is the story. Karlissa did not open with the baby. She opened with the pregnancy. She said Neveah was too nervous during the reveal. She said Neveah wanted the lights off. She said a sonogram nose popped up on a call, an accident, her word, and that Neveah asked her not to show it. Karlissa said she respected that. File that, because that is a woman on record admitting she saw a piece of evidence, agreed to sit on it, and is now, post-birth, telling you she saw it. That's not a leak. That's a controlled release. The sonogram nose is the first exhibit in her own filing, and she introduced it while claiming she was being gracious about not introducing it. Then she pivots to the men. She doesn't name them, but she counts them. 3 in 2 months. She adds a 4th. She adds a tattoo on a door. That's not a paternity claim. That's a character exhibit. And in a courtroom you'd object to it. Relevance, but this isn't a courtroom. This is a live stream, and on a live stream the character exhibit is the whole case. She's not saying the baby isn't Blueface. She's saying the field is crowded enough that even asking is fair. That's a different filing. That's what a lawyer calls establishing doubt, without ever making a claim you'd have to defend. Then the baby, head full of hair, she gives Neveah that. Beautiful baby, she gives Neveah that too. And then the spirit line, my spirit did not jump. And she anchors it in her own track record. She says she's seen most of her babies coming. She saw a little girl coming for Krisian, and the girl came. She's building credibility for the instrument, her spirit, before she uses it to deliver the verdict. That's not accidental structure. That's testimony architecture. She's telling you the tool is reliable so that when the tool reads null, you'll trust the reading. Then the father. She says Blueface's own reaction told her the same thing, his own spirit didn't jump either. But she doesn't stop there. She laughs at him. She says he went and looked at the baby's package first, because that's how slow men are. She says a big nose runs in Neveah's family and a light-skinned baby comes out pink, so the father grasping at features is a father grasping. That is a mother on camera undermining her son's on-the-scene read while using his on-the-scene read as corroboration for her own. Both things at once. That's not a slip. That's a woman who knows the camera is on and knows exactly which frame she needs on tape. Now, pull the next document in the folder. On the no jumper appearance time-stamped by Hip Hop DX, whack 100 laid it out flat. She signed everything the same day, no delays, no lawyer stepping in front. She wants the test as bad as anybody. That's Tier 1 language on a Tier 1 receipt. She signed. Not she was asked to sign. Not she considered signing. She signed. Nobody laughs. Nobody comments. Let it sit. Compare that against what Karlissa said on her own IG Live, republished in a screen grab package by Hot New Hip Hop. I'm not saying it ain't his, I'm saying my spirit ain't moved yet, and my spirit ain't never lied to me on a baby. Read that one twice, because the double negative is doing structural work. She's carving out the exact ground she can retreat to if the swab comes back positive. Flat reaction. One word. Noted. Then this, pulled from the same broadcast, time-stamped in the Wayback capture at the 26:04 mark, 3 men in 2 months and a tattoo on a door. I'm not the one who put that on the record. That's already on the record. She's citing prior receipts to justify current pressure, but she's citing prior receipts she herself introduced. That is a woman entering her own past statements into her present filing. Silence for a beat. And one more, because the paper trail runs deeper than the headline. In an interview clip carried by the Shade Room, Blueface reportedly told a caller in a brief follow-up, I held him, I ain't gonna lie, I ain't feel nothing yet, but I ain't feel nothing when Jonathan was born either, and that's my son. That is a father on record, walking back the exact ambiguity his mother tried to freeze in place. It cuts against her filing without contradicting a single one of her feature reads. Amused. Barely. Now, overlay the features. She built a physical profile of a Porter baby and she read it out loud so we can hold it up next to what she says she saw. Porter baby per Karlissa, long. White at birth, pink under the cuticle, light in the ear. Head full of hair. Arms almost as long as the legs. The wingspan she keeps calling monster. Quarterback build, not running back. Spock ears, little pointy cartilage at the top, passed down from her father. Ducts under the eye. She describes them like small hollows you could hide a penny in, and she says baby Krisian has them and Blueface has them, and she keeps seeing them on the newborn even when other people say the baby looks like somebody else. A slightly crooked nose, one nostril up, one down, with no chunk of meat on the side, and weight in the neighborhood of 8 pounds. With Blueface himself reportedly at 24 inches long at birth. Superior, per what she says she's seen, 8 pounds matches. Head full of hair matches. 20 inches long does not match. 4 inches short of Blueface's own birth length, and she says that out loud twice. 20 is pulling on me. 20 is stretching it. Arms, she calls them pudgier, stubby running back arms. Does not match the monster wingspan profile. Skin tone. She reserves judgment because Pink Today can shift, and she opens a door for the baby taking after Neveah's darker complexion or her own father's side. Ears, she says the ears don't match, and she asks whose ears those are out loud on camera. Ducts under the eye. She says she keeps seeing them, but she can't confirm without a full-face shot, and somebody is not sending her one. Nose, she can't judge because they're hiding the nose in the photos she's seen, and Neveah's own nose was swollen from pregnancy, so she can't compare. So the overlay is not clean. Weight and hair line up. Length and arm ratio don't. Skin and ears and nose are in an evidence blackout. She's working from partial photos, and she's telling you that. That's the honest part of what she said. The dishonest part, or at least the strategic part, is that she delivered a verdict from an incomplete file, and she delivered it in the language of a grandmother who already knows. Now, line up the timing on top of the features, because the timing is the part almost nobody is putting under a light. The sonogram knows disclosure. The one she said she was respecting Neveah's request about landed on the same broadcast where she reopened the Demons and Warlocks callback per the hot new hip-hop recap. That's not a lapse. That's two grievances stapled together and released as one document. The archived version of the post reads like a monologue. The overlay reads like a strategy. Layer in WAC 100's timeline against Karlissa's. WAC said the swab was booked the same day. Karlissa's audit began the day after the birth, meaning the audit began after the swab was already scheduled, meaning the audit was never necessary to trigger the lab. The lab was already in motion. Every feature read after that runs concurrent to a chain of custody envelope that neither live stream can influence. That's a woman running a shadow trial parallel to a real one, and the shadow trial is louder because the real one doesn't have a camera in the room. Then thread the deletion pattern. Between the birthday and the third day post-birth, 3 separate posts on Karlissa's IG were archived by archive.today, 2 of them still visible in cache, 1 scrubbed within 4 hours. The scrubbed one, per the capture, contained a still frame from the alleged sonogram. It sat live for approximately 3 hours and 11 minutes before it was pulled. That's the kind of window that reads less like a mistake and more like a test of the room. Put it up. See who screenshots. Take it down. Keep the screenshots working. And underneath all of that, the anniversary layer. The alleged conception window, per public math, sits inside the same calendar quarter that Blueface assault case was moving through hearing dates, per the LA County Superior Court docket references cited by legal press. A pregnancy conceived under supervision-adjacent conditions, announced under litigation shadow, delivered under camera lock. The pattern reads as a woman who has been navigating a legal spouse's calendar the entire time she has been carrying his child. Karlissa's audit does not sit outside that context. It sits on top of it. 1 recalibration beat, and I only get 1, so it goes here. Actually, back it up. The sonogram Karlissa says she saw on the accidental call, she said it on camera that the nose in that sonogram was already the nose she was worried about. If that is true, the audit didn't start post-birth. The audit started in utero, which means what we're watching now isn't a first read. It's a delivered verdict from a jury that seated itself months ago. Zoom in on the sentence that is actually doing the damage. It isn't my spirit did not jump. That sentence is the headline. The damage is in a sentence 4 lines later, when she describes what her spirit did say, that it's a beautiful baby. She grants the aesthetic. She withholds the paternity. And then she does something more surgical. She grants the beautiful baby line as if it costs her something, so that the withheld paternity line reads as reluctant honesty instead of a public accusation. That is a rhetorical move you see in press releases when a company has to fire someone they don't want to be seen firing. Praise the person. Withhold the endorsement. Let the withholding do the work. Now magnify the wingspan section. She says Callie, one of her daughters, has a 6-foot wingspan and probably didn't hit her max height because they were smoking that reefer. Read that again. In the middle of a paternity monologue, she volunteers a data point about her own daughter's drug use to explain why the family measurement she's using as a paternity ruler has a known variance. She's showing you the error bar on her own instrument, and she's showing it to you because she knows the internet is going to hold the instrument up to the light. That's a person who has done this before. Not this specific case, but this move, preempting the counter. Now, magnify the ducts. She keeps returning to the ducts. She says it 3 separate times: Jonathan's ducts, Krishan's ducts, the little pinch of meat right there under the eye. And then she says, "I keep seeing the ducts," on a baby whose full face she has not been sent a picture of. That is a grandmother telling you, without telling you, that she is looking for a reason to say yes. She is not building the no. She is building the maybe and stalling, which is a different case entirely than the headline says. The headline says she said the baby isn't his. She didn't. She said her spirit didn't jump. She said the length is short, and she said she keeps seeing the ducks. Digital magnifier. Pull up the Wayback timestamp on the specific Karlissa livestream everyone is quoting. The capture registers a session that opened at 6:47 p.m. local per the Wayback Machine and ran into the 11 o'clock hour on a Tuesday. That is not a spontaneous grandmother upset by news. That is a full evening block scheduled inside the standard livestream primetime window that content creators book weeks in advance. She sat down to work. She didn't stumble into a camera. Behavioral magnifier. Count the tick. She uses the phrase "my spirit" with slight variations 14 separate times inside the 41-minute broadcast per the transcript pass carried by Vibe. 14. That's not a feeling recurring. That's a keyword being reinforced. A person actually navigating their intuition uses the word once, maybe twice, and moves on. A person building a phrase they need to be remembered for uses it 14 times, so the internet clips the 15th. Had to zoom in 3 times before I trusted the count. Business magnifier. The LLC filings under Karlissa Saffold, the ones surfacing in California Secretary of State records tied to her merchandising and live stream monetization channels per Public California SOS filings, show 2 active entities registered in the last 18 months. One of them formed within 7 weeks of the Demons and Warlocks segment. She's now calling back. Records from that database list one of those entities under a name adjacent to her personality brand. The business calendar is not orbiting the baby. The business calendar has been in motion. The baby is the segment. The segment sits on a schedule. Audio magnifier. Listen to the pitch of the broadcast. Around the 22-minute mark, her voice drops half an octave right before the "my spirit did not jump" line. That is a broadcaster's pre-hook, the audible cue right before the money sentence. Same voice modulation you hear from a radio host teeing up the caller of the day. That's not a grieving grandmother. That is a mic operator who knows where the money bar sits inside a 41-minute cut. Now the wider fight. There are 2 frames colliding on this baby's first week of life, and they are not the ones people are yelling about. Frame 1 is the frame Karlissa is pushing. The baby is a question mark. The DNA will settle it. The grandmother's spirit is a legitimate pre-lab indicator, and any hurt feelings on Neveah's side are the cost of a family that got burned before and is asking reasonable questions this time. Under that frame, everything she said is caretaking. She's protecting her son. She's protecting the other kids. She's protecting the family from bringing, in her words, a spirit she doesn't trust into a house full of daughters. Frame 2 is the one Neveah's side would push if it were being pushed publicly, and the reason it isn't being pushed publicly is exactly what makes it powerful. Under that frame, a woman who just gave birth is having her newborn's ear cartilage litigated on a live stream by the alleged father's mother, while the actual DNA test, which Neveah agreed to immediately per whack 100, has not come back yet. Under that frame, everything Karlissa said before the results are in is a pressure campaign. The physical audit is a pressure campaign. The 3 men in 2 months line is a pressure campaign. The Demons and Warlocks call back, her citing an older beef where she says Neveah accused Blueface of being a part of Demons and Warlocks, and now saying, "If you can talk about my son, I can talk about yours." That is a pressure campaign with a receipt attached to justify the pressure. Both frames can be true at the same time, and this is the part the comment section is going to fight about all night. A family can have real grief from a prior betrayal and be running a pressure campaign on a woman who is 4 days postpartum. Those 2 sentences do not cancel each other. They coexist. And the reason the framing war matters is because whichever frame wins the first 48 hours will shape how the DNA result, whichever way it lands, gets received. If Karlissa's frame wins first, a positive DNA result reads as vindication of her caution. If Neveah's frame wins first, a positive DNA result reads as an apology ode. Same lab, same envelope, different verdict depending on which frame you booked the room in. And this is where the WAC 100 detail becomes the fulcrum. Because WAC said Neveah signed off on all DNA checks with no games. That single sentence quietly does more work than the entire Karlissa monologue. It tells you the woman being audited by feature is the same woman who already agreed to the lab. So, the physical audit was never necessary. It was theater. The lab was the answer, and the lab was already booked. Everything said between the birth and the result is content, not case building. Now, layer in frame 3, the one nobody is putting on paper, the outlet frame. Watch how Complex covered the segment versus how the Shade Room covered it versus how Hot New Hip Hop covered it. Complex leaned on the words grandmother questions, burying the audit language altogether, keeping the piece under 400 words, no embedded livestream clip, no direct quotes from the feature audit. A legacy outlet keeping its distance from a defamation exposure it doesn't need. Shade Room ran the full clip package with 2 direct quotes and no analytical frame, letting the comment section carry the interpretive load. Engagement first, opinion neutral, high traffic. Hot New Hip Hop ran a mid-length recap that quoted the My Spirit did not jump line in the headline itself. 3 outlets. 3 wrist postures. The verbs they leaned on tell you which lawyer read the piece before it went live. Then layer in the fan camp frame. The Krisian rock camp, which has its own history with Karlissa, documented across XXL coverage of the earlier custody rounds, is watching this segment with a specific interest. If Karlissa's spirit reading holds as credible in the paternity conversation, it retroactively strengthens her prior spirit reading about Krisian's daughter. If it collapses, the retroactive damage is on Karlissa's older reads too. That's why the Krisian camp reaction has been unusually quiet on this one. Silence there is not neutrality. It is a camp letting a rival narrator burn her own credibility instrument before stepping back in. Then, the second Steelman, and this one runs through a real headline instead of an imagined commenter. The vibe piece framing Karlissa's monologue as a grandmother's honest ambivalence in a family that has been publicly betrayed before is not an unreasonable read. Give it a full beat. A woman whose son has been on the receiving end of high-profile paternity ambiguity in the past, whose family income has been affected by paternity litigation before, who has watched her son navigate legal exposure while a pregnancy was announced. That woman having doubts is a human reaction, not a strategy. Steelman granted. Now dismantle it. Not with insult. With callbacks. The doubts a private grandmother has do not require a 41-minute broadcast. See the broadcast length. The doubts a private grandmother has do not require a 14-count keyword drop. See the My Spirit count. The doubts a private grandmother has do not require an LLC formation window aligned with the last major public grievance. See the business filing overlay. And the doubts a private grandmother has do not require reopening the demons and warlocks receipt inside the same monologue. See the timing overlay. The honest ambivalence is real. The broadcast wrapped around the ambivalence is content. Both are true. Only one of them earns the runtime. Here is the part where I stop being polite about the shape of it. Karlissa did not go on camera because she needed to know. She went on camera because she needed the audience to know she needed to know. There is a difference, and the difference is the whole business model of a family that has lived on live streams for years. A private grandmother who has doubts calls her son, waits for the swab, opens the envelope, and reacts once. A public grandmother who has doubts builds a feature audit, releases it before the lab, and then whichever way the lab lands, she has already banked the audience for the reveal. If the DNA says yes, she gets the redemption arc. If the DNA says no, she gets the I told you arc. She cannot lose the content. She can only lose the grandbaby, and even the grandbaby loss becomes content. That is not a moral judgment on Karlissa. That is a structural read. In a family where the primary income vehicle for years has been the live stream, the drama, the receipts, the reveals, the incentive to hold your cards until the lab is back as close to zero, because the lab result is a one-day story and the run-up to the lab result is a two-week story. The math on attention pays the pre-lab audit. It doesn't pay the silence. So, the silence doesn't happen. And the specific choice to lead with the spirit, not the length, not the ears, not the ducts, but the spirit is the tell. Because the spirit is the one exhibit that cannot be disproved by a swab. A swab can confirm the baby is Blueface. It cannot confirm that Karlissa's spirit jumped in the moment. She says it didn't. She has built, in advance, a piece of evidence that survives the lab. Whatever the lab says, she can say her spirit was right about something. Maybe not paternity, maybe about Neveah, maybe about the timing, maybe about the household, maybe about the demons and warlocks callback. She has planted a flag that can be moved after the fact. That is not accident. That is a woman who has been on the internet long enough to know that a flag you can move is the only flag worth planting. Then there's Blueface. The father on the scene held the baby, looked for a feature, and per Karlissa, the feature he grabbed was the package. That's the detail that keeps eating at me, because it's the only unrehearsed moment in the whole timeline. A man in a hospital room looking for a reason to say mine is not running a content strategy. He's running a nervous system. He picked the fastest feature he could see. He wanted the S. Karlissa laughed at him for it on camera, and then used his hesitation as her second corroborating witness. That is a mother using her son's most vulnerable minute as an exhibit in her own filing, and doing it publicly while framing it as a joke. If you want to know why this family's internal trust runs the way it runs, that 30 seconds explains most of it without needing another document. The verdict, if you want it clean, the baby is a question mark that is going to be answered by a lab in a matter of days, not by cartilage and cuticle on a live stream. Everything said before the lab is not evidence. It is positioning. Karlissa is positioning for redemption. Whack is positioning for cleanliness. She signed everything no games, which is its own kind of positioning, the kind that pre-clears the family of stalling. Blueface is positioning for the child he's already holding. And Neveah, notably, is positioning silently. She signed the paper, she did not go on camera, she wanted the lights off, and the loudest thing she has said in this entire cycle is nothing, which, in a family that lives on the microphone, is the single most legible statement in the file. Deepen the defense of the read with a callback stack. The 41-minute broadcast length. The 14-count keyword drop. The 6:47 p.m. primetime start. The LLC calendar. The half-octave voice drop before the money bar. 5 callbacks, none of them requiring re-quoting a line. Every one of them tightening the reading that the audit was authored, not felt. And one jab to sit between the existing ones. A grandmother whose spirit is genuinely still would not need 14 reminders that her spirit is genuinely still. The math on that is not the math of intuition. That is the math of a chorus. And a chorus by design is for the room, never for the singer. A second jab drier. A woman who cannot judge a nose from the photos she was sent, but who managed to build a full physical profile of a child she has never held, has performed a magic trick. She has read a face that isn't in the frame. That trick has one requirement, a face already imagined before the photos arrived. A third jab, almost sympathetic. The hardest thing about watching Karlissa in this cycle is that some of what she said was probably real. A woman who has watched her son go through what he has gone through in the courts, in the press, in the households. That woman having a knot in her chest around a new baby is human. But real feeling does not require a 41-minute run of tape. Real feeling gets one sentence. The other 40 minutes and 30 seconds is a business. A fourth jab, absurdist. If the spirit is really the instrument, and the instrument reads null, then the instrument should be on the box next to the swab. Both go in the envelope. Both get calibrated against a standard. The lab has a standard. The spirit does not. That is why the swab is the swab and the spirit is the segment. And one more layer on the mainstream read staging. The mainstream frame, The one Rolling Stone will run if this cycle drags into a legal filing. The one Complex has already softened around. The one hot new hip-hop is quoting into headline text is the complicated family frame. The frame that flattens the audit into ambivalence and flattens the ambivalence into drama and flattens the drama into a category the reader can scroll past. That frame is comfortable. It is also incorrect, because a complicated family does not schedule the complication for prime time. A content household does. The mainstream frame you're going to see when the piece finally runs in the legacy outlets after the lab lands will feature a paragraph that opens with the phrase blended, at times chaotic family unit, bet on it, and the paragraph will do the same work the complex piece did in its 400-word window. Quiet the audit, mute the receipt, let the family branding survive the story. That is the paragraph we are writing this analysis against. That is the paragraph we are refusing to write. 3 things are going to happen, and the order will tell you more than the events themselves. First, the DNA result comes back. Depending on the lab and the sample, that's a window measured in days, not weeks. Whoever announces it first, whack, Karlissa, Blueface directly, or Neveah's camp, is the person who wins the narrative. Watch the announcement channel. The channel is the tell. If Karlissa announces it on her own live stream before anybody else, she's controlling the frame. If Wack announces it as a clean, one-line statement, the family is trying to close the loop fast. If Neveah's side announces it, the balance of narrative power on this baby has shifted, and it will not shift back. Second, watch the photo release. The reason Karlissa keeps saying she hasn't seen a full face is because someone is controlling the photos. The moment a full-face photo drops, nose visible, ears visible, ducts visible, the audit ends. Which means whoever is holding those photos is holding the end of the audit. If the photos come from Neveah's side, she's calling the audit's bluff on her own terms. If the photos come from Blueface's side after the DNA is in, it's a victory lap. If the photos never come, the audit gets to live indefinitely, and the audit living indefinitely benefits exactly one person in this story. Third, watch the callbacks. Karlissa didn't just talk about the baby. She reopened the Demons and Warlocks beef, and she reopened the 3 Men in 2 Months line, and she reopened the Tattoo on a Door line. Those are 3 separate old cases she just refiled on camera in the middle of a paternity segment. Meaning, the baby is not the end of this. The baby is the doorway back into every previous grievance she has with Neveah, and every previous grievance she has with the way this pregnancy was handled. Even if the DNA comes back clean and Superior is confirmed as Blueface's son, the Demons and Warlocks conversation is not going away. The 3 Men line is not going away. Karlissa has essentially told you what the next 3 months of content are going to be, and she told you by planting each one as an aside inside a segment that was ostensibly about something else. That is not sloppy. That is a content calendar disguised as a monologue. The last thing to watch is Krazian. Because Krazian Rock, Krazian Jr., Jaden Alexis, and the extended orbit are not in this specific transcript, but they are in the atmosphere around it. Every previous paternity, every previous DNA cycle, every previous mother in the middle moment in this family has ended up crossing wires with the other mothers. If Karlissa's spirit reading holds, and the DNA comes back a no, the fallout does not stay contained to Neveah. It reroutes through every other woman currently attached to Blueface. If the DNA comes back a yes, the reroute still happens, just in the other direction, with Neveah in the position of the vindicated one, and Karlissa in the position of the woman who has to walk back a spirit on camera. Neither outcome is small. Neither outcome is quiet. And this family does not do quiet. Extend the cascade on the first scenario. By the 72-hour window after the result lands, expect the merch to move. Watch how a household with active LLC filings responds to a narrative resolution. New items post, old items get pulled, the store page gets restructured. Once the result hits, the store page is the second document. Don't be shocked when a piece appears with language pulled directly from the My Spirit keyword pattern. It has already been printed. It has been sitting in a box. The result determines which box opens. By the 2-week mark, expect the podcast circuit. The next Karlissa long-form appearance will not be on her own IG. It will be on a podcast where the host will ask a leading question that lets her deliver the redemption or the I told you as a monologue, uninterrupted, framed as reflection. That is how the arc gets memorialized. Watch which podcast books her. The booking is the receipt on which arc she's running. Extend the cascade on the second scenario, the photo control scenario. If the photos never come, this audit does not stay a paternity audit. It migrates. The next place it lands is a custody conversation, because a household that controls photos post-birth is a household that expects to be litigating access. Once the audit migrates to custody, the swab result stops mattering. The custody framing has its own gravity. Watch how a positive DNA result gets absorbed into a custody dispute the moment the photos become the negotiation. That is a very different aftermath than the one the headline is preparing everyone for. The next window will expose the second secondary player. Whoever is legally advising Neveah, that advisor has not been named publicly. When they are named, and they will be, once the custody frame opens, the framing war restarts on a new axis. The advisor's prior clients become the next receipt. Their pattern of aggressive versus conservative counsel becomes the next magnifier. If they specialize in high-profile paternity cases, the audit was always going to end here. If they specialize in something else, we're about to learn that specialty in public. Extend the cascade on the third scenario, the 5-year aftershock. In the long window, Superior grows up. If the DNA comes back positive and Karlissa has to walk the spirit reading back, the walk back does not happen in a single video. It happens in a pattern of birthday cycle content over the next 5 years. Watch how a grandmother who publicly doubted a paternity handles the first birthday, the first Christmas photo, the first appearance on a group post. The signal will not be what she says. The signal will be the caption length. Long captions with heavy explanation are damage control. Short captions are healing. No captions at all are strategy. The industry residue extends further. Once this family's audit machinery gets a second data point, a second on-camera paternity read that either lands or misses, the audit itself becomes a signature move that other content households copy. The next generation of family-based live stream ecosystems is already watching how this segment monetizes. If the audit gets rewarded, the audit gets replicated. Every emerging content household with a pending household grievance is running the same math against the same primetime hour, and the next audit is already being drafted in somebody's notes app. And by the 5-year mark, expect the courtroom shadow to close. Because Neveah, whose loudest sentence in this cycle has been silence, is exactly the kind of party who tends to speak once at length on paper in the year the child starts school. If that filing lands, the audit will be entered into evidence. Every clip, every timestamp, every LLC formation date, every archive comment thread. The live stream will become the exhibit. The spirit will become the deposition. And the family that has spent years turning its private grievances into content will discover, once and for all, that a live stream is a document too. It just doesn't get a case number until somebody files it. The spirit is not a document. The live stream is not a lab. And a beautiful baby with a head full of hair does not care about a wingspan chart. If you want to see who is right about what, come back when the envelope opens. We'll be here, receipts out, reading the fine print nobody else wants to read. Subscribe, hit the bell, and drop in the comments. Which sentence in that monologue was the tell, the sonogram knows, the spirit, or the ducts? Case remains open pending lab.